Welcome to another video in our Cold War series. This time might be a long video, but I think it's really important to stop and look at this particular document from the Cold War. We give it the great name of NSC 68. It's an American document, and even though it's not explicitly listed in our syllabus, it is a really important document because of the impact that it has on how the Cold War now develops. And so it's worth our while stopping and taking a look at it. So this document is created in 1950, so let's look at what's happening just before that time. In 1949, so August, when the world finds out in September 1949, the Soviets explode their own atomic bomb. Now this really sets the Americans back. They thought they had at least another couple of years before the Soviets would get an atomic bomb. But this puts them on a much more equal footing. The Americans had had that technological advantage. Not anymore. The other thing, of course, that's happened in 1949 is that China has become a communist nation. This took place in October 1949. And as we've talked about, even though Stalin didn't expect this to happen, didn't plan for this to happen, this is a fantastic win for communism globally. And it's a huge setback for the USA. Remember, it has a foreign policy set out in the Truman Doctrine to contain the spread of communism. So this is a massive blow to the Americans. Meanwhile, in North Korea, the Soviets have also been able to establish a communist foothold there. We'll take a closer look at Korea later. But we want to have an understanding that at the end of 1949, these are all the things that are starting to weigh on the Americans. And so this sets them up to really have a rethink about their foreign policy and how they are going to react to what they see as a communist crisis. This leads the Americans to create a document called the National Security Council Memorandum, Report Number 68. And so there's number 68, that's how it gets its name. So it's a report to the National Security Council, so a report to the key people in the US government who are making decisions about security. And you can see here that it's about the United Nations objectives and programs for national security. So what is it that they're saying? They're saying here that with everything that's just happened in 1949, the Soviet Union is now ahead. It has a superior military position because you need to think about not just having access to an atomic bomb, but the fact that the Soviets' Red Army is still quite widespread around the world, particularly across Eastern Europe. The Soviets have got, a massive military advantage, and now they've got the bomb as well to match the Americans. What the people in this paper are saying is that this has led to a realignment of power relationships between the US and the Soviet Union. And this isn't a temporary thing. This is now actually leading to an indefinite period of tension and danger. Tension and danger not just for the United States of America, but for the whole world. Why is this so? Really because the Soviet Union's got three key objectives, according to this paper from the Americans. It's saying that the Soviet Union wants to be the biggest, strongest communist nation in the world. China's now a bit of a competitor, and the Soviet Union doesn't want to lose that position as the most important ideological and the most important military power center of the communist world. So what's it going to do to keep its number one position? The Soviet Union is willing to extend its power by acquiring satellite states. What does this mean? This means that it has now an aggressive expansionist agenda, that the Soviet Union is looking to take over other countries and spread communism. And in order to do that, it's saying that the Soviet Union will undermine any competing system that threatens its position as the communist world power. In other words, it will undermine capitalism. It will undermine the position of the United States in order to maintain its own objective of being number one communist nation in the world. So this is quite alarmist. This is really saying that America, we're in problems here. We really are in strife. So this paper recommends, in order to respond to this threat, that the US needs, and its allies, because the US can't do it alone, the US and its allies have to basically have a massive, large-scale build-up of its military and its general strengths around the world. Because in the Cold War, if you are seen as the weaker opponent, then you are at threat of being attacked. It is only through building up and having a better power balance that you can make sure that you will not be attacked. And so this paper is saying, with the Soviet Union now ahead, the US has to play catch-up, the US and its allies. And to do this, the paper is saying that the US has to stop focusing just on national security. It's saying that the USA must now commit to global security in order to protect itself and the world. Now, this is it's very, very important to understand how US foreign policy is developing at this point. So we already have the Truman Doctrine in 1947. It's saying we want to stop the spread of communism. But this paper now in 1950 is saying we can't just have an ideological position like this. We have to commit to global security through a massive military build-up if we want to stop the Soviet Union, if we want to make sure that we are not seen as the weak party, if we want to make sure that we are not attacked by the Soviet Union, we have to catch up. So NSC 68 is very important. The interesting thing to note is that this comes out in April 1950. Now, when it first comes out, yeah, people are a bit afraid. 1949's not been a good year. But a number of the people on the National Security Council were going, I'm not quite sure if we have to go this far. In June 1950, the Korean War breaks out. And this certainly leads to people looking at NSC 68 and going, you know what, it's right. NSC 68 was right, and we Americans really do have to commit to a massive military build-up in order to guarantee our security and global security. And so what we do see from June 1950 is the recommendations of NSC 68 are implemented, and America enters into a massive military build-up, and it encourages its allies around the world to also take part in that massive military build-up. Historian Lefebvre basically says that the NSC 68 is one of the key historical documents of the Cold War. It's just as important as the long telegram in influencing the development and the pronouncement of the Truman Doctrine. Ernest May, who is another historian, goes as far as to say that NSC 68 provides the blueprint for the militarization of the Cold War from 1950. That this is the start of the arms race. That's what they're really saying here. The NSC 68 really gets the arms race going. Not everybody thinks that NSC 68 was right. There's a number of historians are very critical of it. So both Taubman and Chomsky, for example, criticise NSC 68 and say it's over-alarmist. There's no empirical basis. That is, there's no evidence on which this report was based. Regardless of that, it does have a significant impact now on how the Cold War develops. It's what happens as we now move into the Korean War, but this arms race, this military build-up, and this much more aggressive defence from the Americans is going to impact what happens in Vietnam as well as in Korea, and also will continue what's happening over in Europe. So that's why I think it was really important for us to stop and take a look at NSC 68 and really think about the impact that this document has on entrenching that militaristic, aggressive foreign policy that we then see the Americans have in place really through to the end of the Cold War.